In this video, we're talking about where your text message goes once you send it. So, Michael, once I send a message or a church sends a message, whether it's to one person or to a lot of people, what are the steps? Where's the route that your message goes before a person actually receives it on their mobile device?
That's a good question. So your question is, if your church is trying to send a text, or is your church is sending a text to your people, or maybe to a visitor, or whatever it is, what are the steps that are happening behind the scenes in that fraction of a second before it gets to your church member or your visitor or something like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when your church sends that message, or your church is going to be using a software provider like Clearstream, or you might be using Twilio or some other texting software, right? So at least for Clearstream, it's going to be a little bit different for other providers. But with Clearstream, I'll kind of go through the stack of what happens when you push send inside of Clearstream. So your church is wanting to communicate to your people. You go into your texting software. Let's just assume it's Clearstream for the sake of this example.
What a great assumption. I think
What a great assumption. We're not biased at all. So you're in Clearstream right now, and you write out your message, and you select who you want to send it to, and you push send. So that message is going from you, obviously, in Clearstream. And then from Clearstream, it's going to our direct Tier 1 aggregator.
What's an aggregator, for those that don't know?
Yeah. How do you not know this ridiculous jargon?
We didn't learn about it in school, surprisingly.
Yeah. So an aggregator is an organization. Usually it's a larger organization, and there's a handful of them in the U.S., and then there's other ones in different parts of the world. But in the U.S., specifically, there's 4 what would be considered Tier 1 aggregators. So these are organizations that have direct connections to every single carrier. So the major carriers are Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint/T-Mobile, which is really T-Mobile now. And then you have smaller ones like US Cellular, and then a lot of Tier 2, Tier 3 carriers, right? So a Tier 1 aggregator is going to be like your interface to connect with all of the carriers, right? So we have, Clearstream has a direct connection to that Tier 1 aggregator. We're not going through someone like Twilio. Other texting softwares, it's very common for them to use just a texting API like Twilio or something like that, or Bandwidth. And then you're basically adding another step. We're sending our message to Twilio, who then is sending it to a Tier 1 aggregator, and then it goes.
It's complicated. So we basically eliminate that step.
Yeah, we have a direct connection to an aggregator. So when you send your message, it's going from Clearstream to our Tier 1 aggregator, or one of our Tier 1 aggregators that we connect with, and then it's going to the carrier. Let's say you're sending a message to one person, and that person is on Verizon. Clearstream, message goes. This all happens, basically instantly. Clearstream to our aggregator. Our aggregator then sends that message to Verizon, sending it to that mobile number's carrier, Verizon. And so before that number is delivered to the Verizon subscriber, there's actually some stuff that's happening kind of parallel to this. So that's your basic stack of your church, your church's software provider, texting provider. Let's just say it's Clearstream. So church, Clearstream, aggregator, carrier, right? Verizon, and then the end user. But we kind of have this sidecar that's happening on the carrier and aggregator side, and that's for filtering and checking for spam and things like that. So carriers use a third-party organization known as the CTIA, which is the Wireless Association. The CTIA governs all of the guidelines and rules that any organization that is doing texting inside of the U.S. has to follow, right? So they're the ones who enforce, hey, if someone replies, stop, or I don't want to receive your messages anymore, the brand or your church has to opt them out. And we handle that automatically. But a lot of small nuanced things like that the CTIA enforces to make sure that organizations are doing clean texting. And so that message is going to the carrier, right, in the stack. The carrier is then basically having the CTIA, and the CTIA has its own auditing third party, which
There's
is
so many companies at this point. Wow.
So WMC Global is the organization that that basically audits and audits any message, right, or any campaign. And so there's these kind of like lateral things that are happening on the carrier and aggregator step to make sure that there's no spam or any kind of prohibited texting or any kind of prohibited content going on. But those are kind of like side steps that's happening, and all this happens within a fraction of a second. So to recap, your church's software provider like Clearstream, an aggregator who then connects to your carrier or to the person's carrier, who then delivers the message to that mobile number. And the reverse happens when they respond back. So with Clearstream, it's two-way texting. It just goes up that ladder. If we want to go deeper down the rabbit hole,
always, of course.
Since this series is talking about A2P 10DLC, also on the side is what's now kind of another organization that kind of plays a role on our step as the service provider, the aggregator step, and the carrier step, which is the campaign registry. So if you're using a 10-digit number, an A2P 10DLC number now or in the future, all of that I just listed is happening. But then you also have kind of some other vetting and auditing things that are happening from the TCR process, specifically for that number, not necessarily the message content, but for that number and the organization that is using that number and sending messages. They're making sure that that organization is actually legit, that is sending the kind of messages that they say they're sending. So there's a lot of moving parts to it, but it's actually it's relatively simple once you kind of get the idea.
So as you can see, there are a lot of changes always happening from a lot of different sources. But if you have any questions, please, at any time, feel free to reach out to us. We would be more than happy to help walk you through some of this stuff. And as always, stay tuned for more of our videos. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.